Okay. So you've just finished overseas and you come back to Australia. Do you remember that point in your life, what was happening back then?
I do, because I felt like I'd come back to Australia, the tail between my legs. I'd gone as far as I could overseas. Opportunities and funding had dried up. But I had a really good offer to come back to Australia through an old Formula 3 engineer of mine, Joe Sasso.
Yep.
And he'd been working in Formula 3 with BRM and a new sponsor, Opus Prime. And they were looking at gearing up and going big, but they needed to finish that year off. James Winslow was hunting for the title, and they basically needed a wingman. So I got drafted into a Formula 3 car on the premises of stepping up to a sedan the next year. Managed to win the Tasmanian John Bowe Super Prix.
Yeah, I remember that.
In that process, which was cool.
Yep.
And then we had the options on the table for 2008 of either Development Series or Career Cup.
Yeah, right. And you had the chance to actually, you got offered obviously a supercar thing, but you decided, you know what, I want to go Career Cup because it was pretty cool back then. And obviously Jeff, my stepdad, had helped start that category. And I remember those Optimus Prime, Optimus Prime, Opus, I remember those cars, and I remember you racing in it. And there's footage of it on the internet. There's a lot of data, like obviously about all the race car drivers on the internet, but there's a footage of you at Adelaide, and you've literally got four wheels off the ground. You use that car to its max potential.
Oh yeah. So it was interesting because it wasn't a choice of mine. I think if I was pushing hard to go in the Development Series and go in the V8 Supercars, that would have been the obvious choice. But they'd already sponsoring a driver in the V8, so they said, "Look, we want you to go Career Cup." So that's fine. I'm not going to argue. Like you said, very cool category, always has been. So we committed to Career Cup. I'd formed basically a group of people to go in, myself included, to buy the car.
Yep.
And then Opus Prime was the major sponsor. Well, come round 2, it's 2008, remember, start of the GFC.
Yep.
Opus Prime, the directors,
Prime.
they're in jail. They're locked up.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so they were doing dodgy dealings with ANZ Bank.
Yep.
And so they're all in the slammer.
That's kind of when the whole, like, not just Porsches and stuff, that's when all the categories start to lose a lot of grid numbers.
That took me 10 years to get over that. So I invested everything I had into buying the car. So then the sponsor goes broke, out of action.
Yeah.
So we committed then to keep going through the whole year. And at that point, by the third round, I'd finished on the podium. I was Rookie of the Year, leading the Rookie of the Year ahead of James Moffat. Everything was good, but we just had no money.
Yeah.
We had tests and the cars deteriorated, and I just went backwards.
So you pretty much just hopped in the car and raced it. You never did any testing of the Porsche?
I did a couple of test days beforehand.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a transition, obviously, coming from the open wheelers to the sedans, but it was going pretty well. But then by the end of 2008, the GFC had hit. Porsche Career Cup was no longer in 2009.
Yep.
The car had lost all its value. I had these new people in who'd bought the car, so then the car had lost its value. We sort of had a plan to keep racing Career Cup for a couple of years, and so it was all in tatters.
Yeah, right. I want to actually know how you met, because I love Paige. I've actually stolen a few of her meals off her plate. How did you actually meet your wife?
Well, it's through the New South Wales Road Racing Club. There was obviously a bit of a interaction there, and we'd actually known each other good over 10 years ago. And then we'd never sort of really connected until I'd come back, and she was in Europe too.
Yeah, right.
Come back as well, and then
and that's how family. No Doreen. Doreen didn't match it up at all.
She's taking credit for it now. But I don't know.
We were speaking about this a while ago. I should actually probably get Doreen on here because
she'd be good. You'd have to extend the length of your podcast. But.
Yeah. So we've spoken a bit about your wife and your Career Cup time. At this stage, did you go into GT racing and driver coaching? Was that when your career where you had to make a bit of a change and make a bit of a budget to live?
Yeah, you're right. That was where the driver coaching really ramped up. I mean, in Europe, I'd worked sort of for Palmer Sport, which is cracking full corporate setup, and then doing one-on-one coaching with drivers, and I was doing one-on-one driver coaching for Carlin and Bruno Senna and a lot of the guys coming through there. But when I come back here, it started to become my mainstream source of income. And then so being in Courier Cup, that sort of led into a bit of GTs, and then I started racing the Audis and doing the 12 hours and some GT championships.
Yeah, you raced with I think it was Greg Taylor.
Yep.
Let's see how good my memory is. Greg Taylor. I think Adrian Padiacci. Yeah. There was another one that you raced in the Bathurst 12 hour. How'd that go, by the way?
That was good until we had an issue there.
That was in an old Cup car, wasn't it?
It was in an old Cup car. Yeah. We qualified. There was a couple of the Cup cars there, and we had Alex Davison, Earl Bamber, myself, and like the Cup cars are awesome at Bathurst because you've got the straight line speed.
Yeah.
So you get ahead of a couple of those GT cars, and you can be a bit of a pain. I really rated those sort of Cup cars because we were in the B category in the 12 hour, but you could still,
still race
it. Be in the top 10.
Yeah, right. How'd you rate your time with Greg Taylor? Greg Taylor was a huge backer of yours, much like Nick Kelly is as well today. Well, how was your time with Greg Taylor? And didn't you also do in your time in GT? You raced in Malaysia and a few other countries, didn't you?
Yeah.
At that time?
Yep. So that was Greg actually came to War Racing and started a massive program and ramped up really quick. Yeah. And David said, right, let's get Bart in, and basically paired us up. So that went well. We won the 2015 GT Trophy division, so the older cars, and then Greg stepped up to the newer car, and then we did the Bathurst 12 hour the next year, 2016, and we won the Pro-Am division up there.
Yep.
6 outright, first Audi team home. Went really well. So that was Greg, myself, and Nathan Anchun.
Yeah, right.
So that was a pretty good combo, to be honest, and that was really
that was a really fun time. Now, I obviously remember it because when I go to the shop, I see photos, big posters on the wall. So that's easy for me to remember. Another thing that I got to bring up is, although it didn't really get going, I guess we're maybe spinning out of time here, but you had your time with Mildon Motorsport in the inaugural S5000 TCR championship before it is what it is today. How was it juggling between the S5000 and the TCR Subaru, which was a bit of a dog car, to be honest? No one runs it now.
Yeah, so that was born about, and it's a good sort of tie-in with the driver coaching I was doing. So Mildon, Liam, is based in Melbourne, and he was using me to do all these observed license tests, which I do for drivers wanting to come and get their race license for what was CAMS and now Motorsport Australia. So I was doing that for him. He had a client who wanted to sort of ramp things up a bit. Liam had wanted to get involved in sort of the next level of motorsport. So he'd been running team in basically rallying and Victorian state level. And then it just sort of was fit with the new S5000s rolling in. So we grabbed a car, went to Phillip Island, had the worst debut ever, shunted. And then we raced it at Sandown for the first race. So that was cool, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was Barrichello out.
Oh, that was awesome. I loved that. I loved that event. That just planted S5000 back onto the map.
And you've got to give it to GRM for the way they did all that. Chris Lambden, it was actually, I remember going to Chris Lambden and seeing what was the prototype car back in 2015 with Greg Taylor. We were racing at Sandown. When Chris, we went and had a look at it, and you could see his vision then, and for him to be so persistent.
They actually had two cars of the S5000, the Fiat Supercar version and the other one, remember? Then they created the GRM version.
Yeah, that's right. So fortunately, they stuck with the right one, and then they developed it, and it's a brutal car, and their ethos was basically to replicate what was Formula 5000 with a sort of modern-day touch.
Yep. Yeah, and now I want to get onto your time in with PR Tech Racing, World Time Attack, which you're most known for these days. So a lot of people know Barton Mawer, the 2-time World Time Attack champion, which I scratch everything that I know in the pits. But what was your time with PR Tech? Back in I think it was 2018-19 was your time when they've built the car and they've modernized the car. What's it like racing in what you've done to opposed to World Time Attack and the way Ian Baker does things?
On the outside, it looks very different, doesn't it? I mean, Ian does such a great job. He's sort of that old school rock promoter kind of style about him. Parties hard, plays hard, and then works hard, and the product he's got around World Time Attack is just brilliant. But from my point of view, it's the same thing. You got a car, you're trying to make it as fast as you can.
Mm.
With my relationship with Power Tech, it stems from a long time ago, well over 10 years ago, where I just started working with them as a basically their driver coach for their customers, whether it be road cars or race cars, to either help with their driving or also developing the cars. So Power Tech are based up at Brookvale, really cutting edge stuff. Everything, they got the dynos, they do everything from fabricating
got a simulator as well, don't
simulator to whatever you want. And if it's with a Porsche, even better. So that was a long time relationship. They'd already built the car. I wasn't involved with it from the start. So David Wall had debuted the car. It was a tough first year. Usual thing with Time Attack. It was the last bit was rushed. I think the car literally caught on fire. So David managed to get through and get a respectable result. Yeah. And then year 2, they asked me to come on board, and it was still a massive development phase. And then, I mean, it's no surprise that I think Nemo with Luffy was the last car to come in and on his debut year and win. Usually it's a bit of a journey. And then so it took a couple of years for us to sort of get to the point where the car was quicker than Hammerhead, and then then we won.
And the big crowds there. And you bring your family along to that as well. How does Jasper obviously find when Dad's at a big event like that? Does he get more enthusiastic than he normally is about car racing, or just not phased at all?
I think he gets more enthusiastic seeing you. He's every open wheel he calls Dan the man car. And so I mean, I got posters obviously around and memorabilia, but it's just all part of
your dad's pretty proud of your time in World Time Attack, though. He's got the big thing in the shop. He's got the big World Time Attack number, the lap time on there. And
well, I stole the big banner. They had the promotional banner outside Sydney Motorsport Park. I shouldn't say stole.
Yeah, well, you won it anyway, so you should take it anyway.
Permission to take it. So it's a massive banner. I mean, it'd be 20 minutes long.
So with your time in World Time Attack, you were building it to the point where it was starting to win. Like, obviously now it's at that point where it's a 2-time winner. Has there been any more advanced work put on that car, or has it kind of just stayed in 2019?
It's predominantly 2019 spec. They've been modifying the rear suspension a little bit, and also tuning the turbo. So last time we drove it, the throttle was pretty much an on-off switch with that sort of power, but they're just refining it. So it's just one of those cars. It'll keep absorbing whatever time and effort you spend on it to keep improving it.
Yeah. Do you actually enjoy talking a bit about your driver coaching, because you are a driver coach? You don't just run me. You run a fair few people. Do you enjoy driver coaching these days? Because you get to go out and witness, beginners to, myself and others. Do you get the same thrill out of it as you do racing a car, like in Europe?
I don't know if I get the same thrill.
Yep.
But I certainly enjoy it, and it's great seeing drivers like yourself. Getting result. We have a plan. We know how to work it through. We execute it, and we get a result. So I do enjoy that, and I understand that that's what's going to be me going forward, and keep earning a living out of motorsport, which is what I love doing. I also enjoy how the data logging and the camera systems are getting so evolved now. You can get really involved, and because I understand what the driver wants and needs and what it feels like in the seat, use all those tools and really extract all the information out of that to help drivers go fast. And that, I really enjoy. Yeah,
you actually utilize extra mechanics as well, who's helped me out from other teams when they don't actually have other work going on. So more engineering doesn't only just foster talent, it actually fosters mechanical talent as well.
Yeah, but it does. And then that probably stems back from what I was saying earlier, where David's such a good teacher that around more engineering, we've got a lot of people coming in and out, a lot of people wanting to be around and work, and then we draw on all that. And with the contacts we've got over so many years, we've got a good wide spread of people in the industry we can use and rely on.
We're coming to the end of the podcast now, so I'm going to talk about before, as it's closing into 2022, but more so 2019, where you went to America after you'd won World Time Attack. Do you remember your time over in America? I remember also you telling me, you had some fans over there.
So off the back of Time Attack, I got invited by the Americans who are over here and trying to do similar events to go and do the Super Lap battle at Circuit of the Americas. And that was really good. it was the idea to do a recce run to hopefully one day take RP968 over, which would still be amazing. And so I went over in a much more subdued car, but just to learn and meet the people and see the crowds. And I was met by these Mexicans with a T-shirts that printed off with a big picture of my head saying, Barton Mawer, will you marry me? And it was really hard to understand, like, you know,
do I marry them or not?
Yeah. So, but no, they were great. They were such cool people, and he gave me one. And I was able to bring it home and give it to Paige.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you're I'm gonna get David Wall on the show as well. So I want to actually ask you about your friendship with David Wall. You and Dave have always been close through your whole friendship. When did that actual friendship start?
That started about 2001. So between Neil McFadden, David and myself, really, really close-knit group, and all living very close together and racing, and we all go out together. And then, when David's just been really good with me over the years, and, even last night, hanging out with him, looking at the new Cup car. So it's good to see Wall Racing just growing like it has.
Massive
and,
now.
David's just put so much work into it.
I want to ask an interesting question. You've obviously listened to my podcast plenty of times because I'm your driver. But what do you think could change in the Motorsport Australia industry? What would you change if you were the CEO for a day?
That's a great question. I probably haven't thought about it enough. And it's without sounding too sort of stereotypical, cliched, but grassroots. I'm in a fortunate position where I work with the top categories. I work with teams that have got a budget to go out and do what they need to do. But when I was racing karts and Formula 4, we could go out to a track and just drive for a whole day.
Yeah,
and you can't do that. It sounds silly, but you're an open wheeler and you want to go to a track,
Eastern Creek or
Eastern Creek, they call themselves a premier track, and just test for a whole day and drive around. You can't do it.
Yeah,
it's not easy to fix that. And I don't think there's an easy answer, but for a young driver to have to just commit and go with a full team, with a semi-trailer truck and full-time mechanics and, insure the car and have a race engineer to go and learn how to change gear.
Yeah.
It's a bit hard to swallow when there's so many father-son combos out there that, want to enter the sport and
from go-karts.
And from go-karts and try to, if they want to enter open wheelers, and it's not so easy to do. And I try to help a lot. I'm doing an LT for a young girl who's about to race Formula Ford this year on this Friday, and I try to help where I can, but that's just little bits. It needs to be a little bit more from the top, and a lot of people talk about it, but not a lot gets done.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you technically two questions, but it is one. What are the top 3 race cars you've ever driven, and what are the top 3 tracks that you've ever driven?
Just thought about this a bit more. So, top 3 cars. I'm going to have to say RP968.
Yep. World Time Attack car goes number 1.
World Time Attack car.
Bang.
No surprises. Boom. A 10th away from the outright lap record.
Yep.
Second would be Formula 3 car. And I think the most recent, and sounds old now, the car I would have driven is about an 04 model Dallara. So, any Dallara would be right up there.
Yeah.
And then 3 is just a good go-kart.
Yeah, a good go-kart. Yeah. You
good.
can't go wrong with a go-kart. We literally just go go-karting whenever we can. At the most randomest minutes of the day, we'll go out. It's so much fun. But what are the top tracks that you've driven?
Circuits. Well, I've raced on the Nordschleife, the old Nürburgring.
Yep.
I've done the 24-hour and races there, so that's just easy number 1.
Yep.
Number 2 is Oran Park.
Yeah, that was a great track.
Absolutely. The day we lost Oran Park, I still shed a tear every time we drive past there and look at the so-called progress of the housing estate. And then number 3, Monza.
Monza, because it's just fast. It's just wicked
don't
quick.
Crash.
I want to ask about, before we close, you've actually done, every now and then you actually get your family out to the racetrack, and you've got your own radical, which you've said earlier in the podcast, but you actually brought them out last year to have it came up in the memory from your wife from Facebook. This is the reason why I'm bringing this up. Do you remember much of that day and who was out there with your family? Like,
I remember the day because we were just all sweating so much. It was that hot day at Wakefield where your tarmac sticking to your shoe. But look, it was just a family and friends day because obviously what we do is pretty cool. And so many people around sort of go, oh, if I ever get a chance to drive or if I could ever, you know. So look, the radical I've got is it's I like to use it for driver training and people to get experience with that sort of car. So I just put a day on at Wakefield. One of John Boston's track school days, which are brilliant. We just rocked up there.
Yeah.
Had about 12 or 14 people. I just stayed in the passenger seat all day and just let them all have a drive. I mean, what a thing to do. We had people from like teenagers to, you know, almost grandparents driving the car. And yeah, I like to share what we do. We're a close family, and those guys all have to put in their bid and sometimes cop what is, like most sports, so selfish behaviours and focus, and the family have to work around that. So it's just nice to say, well, let's go and have a fun day.
How do you juggle, well, we're still obviously closing the podcast, but how do you juggle, like, if you're coaching, because it is full on, because I'm a full on customer sometimes, as
really,
you know. I get a bit excited sometimes, but how do you juggle the family life and the coaching at the same time to just, is it hard for you, or do you just
if you can handle no sleep, it's fine.
Well, Bart, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I much appreciate it, and I guess I'll see you probably next week.
Let's go go-karting.
Yeah, sounds good.